Hi, I would like to talk today about how we resolve conflict, both externally in our relationships with others and internally within ourselves. Self-actualization is a process of discovering who we are based on who we are not. We often have to deprogram the conditioning that was instilled within us from childhood onward. So what I would like to talk about are these visual aids here. The bottom one is called Karpman's Drama Triangle, and it was created by a man by the name of Stephen Karpman, who identified 3 roles that are predominantly responsible for continuing conflict and continuing drama, and creating it, recreating it, and engaging in it with the other roles. These 3 roles naturally gravitate to each other and are known as the victim, the rescuer, and the persecutor. As they gravitate to each other, they all shared a common theme of trying to avoid any personal blame or guilt by projecting them onto the others within the triangle. So they naturally gravitate to each other, and then they divert any personal blame onto each other. So we can see why this doesn't work. Yet I want to discuss this in greater detail so we can get an idea of how we actually are engaging in these roles within our households, in the school, classroom, at work, in the workplace, with our employees. And I also want to discuss the inner conflict triangle, which is something I created myself and I've written about in my book. And the inner conflict triangle discusses the internal conflict of the hero, victim, and inner villain within us. But first, I want to move outward and then come inward with it. So we start from what we know, which is our relationship with others in the external world. Oftentimes, we form one of these 3 roles when conflict arises, and then we look to the other roles to resolve the conflict. We will start with the bottom position of the triangle, the victim. The victim is positioned at the bottom for a reason, because both of these roles feed off of the victim. The victim is someone who always has excuses for when things go wrong. It's never their fault. And we know these kind of people. They play the poor, pitiful me card, and they say, I have no way of changing this. If this person over here, or if the weather were nicer, or if it wasn't so hard or unrealistic, and so they always have an excuse. And the victim seeks pity. They seek for someone to relieve them of any personal responsibility. So what do they naturally do? They seek out a rescuer, or a hero, as I call it up here. I'll get to the differences between the names once I get to this triangle, but for now, the rescuer is what we'll call it. They naturally, as a powerless victim, attract a rescuer to save them. The rescuer has all the answers. That's the kind of person you meet in your everyday relationships that is always trying to fix people. They always attract broken, dependent people who need them. So they continue to seek out people, and what they do, and they're above the victim in this triangle positioning, because they seek their happiness and their self-esteem through the broken. They feed off of the broken and try to lift them up in order to feel better about themselves. The persecutor also attracts the victim, and the persecutor does so from the position of being an antagonizer, of being that person in groups that always points out the flaws and the failures within others to make themselves feel better. So they need the victim. The persecutor feeds off the victim so they feel superior. The persecutor's main thought is it's me against the world. And so either the world's going to come after me, or I have to be, and I'm just going to have to lay down and take it, or I can fight it, and I can make people obey me. I can instill obedience within them by establishing rules out of fear, by exposing the victim as being broken and needing me. So they tear down the victim, and the victim obeys them in response out of fear, because the victim doesn't want to make any decisions on their own. So the persecutor uses that to their advantage and builds themselves up. The rescuer says, hey, you're powerless to change this relationship. I'm going to step in and fix this. I am going to help you do what you are unable to do for yourself and overcome this person. Now, This sounds destructive enough when you just discuss it, but the biggest issue with it is that all three of these roles view themselves as having no part to play in this game. So when things go wrong, the persecutor says, well, it's your fault for not obeying me, and if you would quit antagonizing the victim to overpower me, and you would just listen to me because I'm always in charge and I'm always in control, then we'd have no problem. We just need you to obey. And if you would obey, there wouldn't be a problem. The victim says, you know, I'm powerless to change anything I'm doing. I cannot change this over here. So if you don't do it for me as the rescuer, then it's your fault. And it's also your fault as a persecutor for being so mean and being hateful. And the rescuer says, you know, nothing's my fault when things go wrong because you just didn't listen to me. I have all the answers. I'm not the one that needs help, and you don't appreciate me enough. So then what happens is the victim will continue to recreate situations in which they fail and need saved. The rescuer will continue attracting people who are needy and dependent upon them, and they will continue to be the decision maker and avoid anything that makes them feel helpless or needy upon others. And the persecutor will continue to avoid situations which make them feel vulnerable or out of control. And so it's a very destructive pattern in which we have convinced ourselves that we are innocent and that everyone else is guilty. Yet it takes all three of these roles to create this destructive conflict. And so now I wish to deviate from Cartman's drama triangle at the external level and move to the inner conflict triangle that I discuss at length in the book I'm writing. The inner drama triangle, or the inner conflict triangle, is a direct reflection at the external level of how we feel within ourselves. So we, within ourselves, have an inner villain, an inner victim, and an inner hero. And the reason the villain, in my example above, is in the downward position and not the victim, because unlike in society where we either attempt to save the victim on one side or tear them down on the other side and attract them as a centralized point to create conflict, in our internal lives, we create the need to save others or the need to be saved based on feeling worthless inside and repressing that to the unconscious level. So that's why there is a line drawn right here. And the villain role is down below the line oftentimes. Now, what is this right here? This is how the villain role is created. So the origin of this entire triangle comes from some sort of shame or guilt that we are still holding on to, that we have not forgiven ourselves for. So we did something and planted a seed, and that is supposed to be a seed. We planted a seed within ourselves. We went against our parents' conditioning or against the church or against what we were told in school, and we felt bad about it. We did not forgive ourselves for it, and instead of doing that, we started beating ourselves up. We started saying, we deserve to be punished, we are not good enough, we don't deserve to be happy, we are a failure. All those very negative comments, self-destructive behavior. And what we did is the more we repeated that within our minds and did not come to terms with it and resolved it at the conscious level through forgiveness, through acceptance, and through letting go, as we continue not to follow those positive coping mechanisms and instead continue to feed those thoughts, we began believing them more and more, and they gained more friction. So we continue to hear in our heads, you're not good enough, you're a failure, you don't deserve to be happy. And as those thoughts continued, we watered the seed, and they grew roots, and they developed an identity into the inner villain. So the inner villain within us, or inner critic, might be another word people might relate to, is the part of us that believes that we should not be happy and that we do not deserve to be loved. Now, how long can you play that role out consciously without forgiving yourself before you finally just want to get away from it? And that's what we find in these next two roles. So a part of us, the inner villain, believes we deserve to punish ourselves. And we don't deserve to forgive ourselves. We don't deserve to be forgiven. So we carry this pain related to some sort of shame or guilt based on going against the grain, going against our condition. So we carry the pain. We say this is our scarlet letter. And then we cover that scarlet letter through the conscious roles of the hero and the victim. Now, how do we do this within ourselves? Well, take the hero role at the conscious level for maybe a 5-year-old boy who went against his father's wishes. He did something really bad. His father yelled at him, maybe punished him. But the kid's self-punishment was the worst part of it all. Because the kid told themselves that they deserve to be punished, they're not good enough, and they continue playing this out in their minds until they form this inner villain identity. Yet because it became so hard to face this within ourselves as a little child especially who doesn't have any emotional control, maybe we began to fantasize about saving people. And so maybe the 5-year-old loves Superman and watches Superman every day on the movies and says, you know, I love Superman. I idolize Superman. So they, as a way of coping with their own shame and guilt that they have not forgiven themselves as, they push it away, they push it down, and fantasize about being Superman. And they're only 5 years old, so they picture themselves saving all these people who need them. And they say, man, this feels good to be needed, to be wanted, to feel strong, and to feel great about myself. And so then, this hero role might carry over into regular life. Maybe they go to the playground, and some kid is beating another kid up or picking on them. And you step in as with that newly developed hero role, and you say, hey, knock it off, or I'll knock it off for you. That kid didn't do anything wrong to you. And then that kid thanks you and says, hey, thanks for taking up for me. That took a lot of guts. And so and there's nothing wrong with that when it comes from a healthy place. But when you're still carrying this internal unconscious pain, you then use that praise to fuel yourself at the conscious level while the inner villain's still operating and is like the puppet master behind the stage pulling the strings. So what you will see in the hero role is that the amount of saving is never good enough. You can never fix people enough. It's never enough, and then you'll blame it on this victim, this innocent victim. You'll say that they don't appreciate you enough, they don't care enough about you, or that they didn't listen to you and they should have done what you told them to do. So that's how you play that role out when the inner villain is being repressed. It hasn't gone away, it's still lingering in the shadows. Another way you might deal with this as a child, using the victim role. Maybe you have an abusive parent, and you feel absolutely powerless to stop the abuse. And you begin to think you deserved that abuse as a child because you had no idea how to regulate these emotions. You had no idea how to understand what was really going on in your life. So you thought that maybe you did do something to deserve it. And so you were getting punished and abused, and you finally say, you know, I deserve every bit of this. I'll never be happy, and I never deserve to be happy. And so you have these seeds of shame and guilt, and you water it with these thoughts. But instead of going the hero role, you may imagine yourself being saved from your pain. And because you're saved from your pain, in your fantasies, you picture people who are strong, who have all the answers, and who want you, and they pity you, and they feel bad for you. And that makes you feel better about your situation. You say, well, obviously, none of it's my fault. It's not my fault, or this person over here wouldn't be saving me. They understand me. And so what happens within ourselves is we identify it at the conscious level with one of these two roles. And they're both in an attempt to hide our inner villain, because a part of us has still not forgiven ourselves for the past. And we may have pushed it down for so long and engaged in these two roles here that we no longer even remember what it is we needed to forgive within ourselves. So that's just the three roles at the inner conflict triangle, and then the three rows below in the Cartman's drawing triangle. On the next workshop, I would like to discuss how we come to terms with these roles, how we identify them in our everyday lives, and then how we also consciously resolve and balance out these roles and carry out healthy relationships, not only in our external world, but within ourselves and our minds as well. Thank you.